The next technique I'm going to show you is called Millefiore. Millefiore is basically making colored clay and then using it to make a little loaf of different colors, cutting it all up, and then sticking it on your clay. So to start off, what you're going to need to do is to take some colored slip and dry it out. We have a bunch of flat slabs, and don't grab a flat one, don't grab these rounded ones, those are for other things. But you can grab one and they look like this. And what I've done before I started the video is I started by painting a pretty good amount of colored slip on the slab, and I let it dry for a while. You don't want to leave it on here for too long. You don't want it to get chalky like it is around the edges. But you're going to take your metal rib and you're going to gently scrape up all that awesome clay. Now I will tell you something. Plaster, which is what these are made of, very highly absorbent material, if this gets in our clay, if we get little chips in our clay, it's going to blow up. They're called lime pops. They pop right off the piece when it's firing. It's bad news. So you want to be as gentle as possible, and then take what you have collected and scrape it up, just like you're smoothing a slab. And I check every time to make sure that I'm not getting any sort of plaster in there. I probably waited a little too long on this one. You don't have to wait quite as long as I did, but that's a good amount. Okay, so we have a little ball of brown clay, and then I'm going to go ahead and clean off my rib and scoop up some of the titanium yellow. That's a little better. I think the brown was just a little bit dry. So we're not getting any plaster in here. It's just not going to try to clean it. I'll show you how to do that at the very end. If it looks like you got any plaster in there, just throw it away and start over. Okay? So that's about as much as I can scrape off this guy. I'm going to put this over to the side. So now I have two different colors of clay. You can do 3, 4, 5, 6, as many as you want. Okay? But what I'm going to start to do now is take these two balls of clay and roll them into longer coils. If you look up Millefiore, first figure out how to spell it, and then look it up, on Pinterest you'll see all sorts of, it's called polymer clay. People do polymer clay, Millefiore, all the time. It's a really popular process. You don't see it as often, I don't think, in the clay slip, but I'm going to start with that coil. This is going to dry out really fast. It's such a thin coil. And then I'm going to do the same. This is getting a little bit dry. I just want to brush it with some water and try to wet it a little bit. And once you wet it, you'll notice that it's getting all over your hands. It was drying out. Like I said, I probably let it sit a little too long on the slab, but that's okay. I'm going to roll this one into, I'm not going to roll this one, I'm going to take and make this one into more of a slab, I guess you could say. So I'm going to flatten it, flip it over, flatten it. A little roller might be a nice thing to have right now, but it's all the way across the room and I'm already recording, so we're not going to do that. Okay? So, you got that, and I'm going to take and probably do the same thing. Once you get the hang of it, you can try all sorts of different stuff. Look it up online. I'll admit I'm not the greatest at Millefiore. I lack the patience, but some people can make intricate little pictures. You'll see when you cut it up. So I'm going to start my stack by just putting the yellow on top of the brown. And I've had students make tons of these. Make little bracelets or little pendants. Okay, so that's what I've got. Brown on one side, yellow on the other. Take my needle tool and I'll cut that right down the middle. So you can already see yellow on one side, brown on the other. Restack and press. I'm even going to go another one, put the yellow on the back as well. So it's yellow, yellow with 2 layers of brown. And then flatten it a little bit again. You can see I'm kind of making a sandwich out of this delicious slip sandwich. I'll cut that, flip them, stack them, press. And this can even be rolled again into another coil. And what you're going to see, if you are patient and you don't fast forward the video, cut this again, restack. Now just even up the ends and get rid of that guy. Now you notice I'm getting a little bit of brown in the yellow, a little bit yellow in the brown. Don't sweat that, okay? That's going to come together later. But I'm just going to make this into a little square. You could give it a twist here if you wanted to mix the colors even further. I think I'm going to do that. Give it a little bit of a twist. And roll it. Okay, you can see we're starting to get some really neat effects. Now, how do you really see the inside of this? The best way that I've found is to grab a little length, that's hard to see on the video, is to grab a little length of thread and work it underneath. And I'm going to cut this on somewhat of an angle here. I hope you can see that. I'm going to cut through this on a little bit of an angle and hold it down with one finger and pull up through it. You see, isn't that cool? We've got yellow and brown mixed together. And I'm going to try to make some very thin little slices, little wafer thins. Like I said, it's a very time-consuming and kind of tedious process, but I think once you get the hang of it, it's a lot of fun because you can make a lot of design. I just broke the thread. You can make a lot of design for kind of minimal effort. I don't know, it's a little bit of work. It's a lot of cleanup. But for what you get to paint each one of these, I think would kind of be a pain. Aren't those pretty? I'll move the camera down so you can see a little bit better. And I'm just kind of sawing through, trying not to mix the colors that much. Again, I wouldn't worry too much about that. But some people are so good at this, they can make little pictures on these guys, and I think that's awesome. And the more colors you add, the prettier they become. Experiment with this technique and see what type of cool stuff you come up with. Okay, so what do we do with these? Good question. I don't know. Let's find out. I'm going to keep one of these whole, and let's say you want to do this on the outside of a mug or a cup, or use these little pieces as decoration. I'm going to basically stir up some slip in the area where I want these to go. So I'm just going to take a brush. A toothbrush would work great for this. A sponge. And if you have one of these tools, if you've made one of these, which I highly recommend, you can kind of score the area where they're going to go onto. Just lightly. These are not structural. They do not need to, be heavily scored before you put them on. And I'm going to take and score up the back of my Millefiore piece. And just start gently pressing them in place. And you're going to notice that as you press them, you're going to mix your colors. There's some color on your fingers. Not a big deal. Don't sweat it. When this dries, and it's almost like bone dry, take a little rib or the end of one of these cards and just gently scrape the surface. And you'll see that surface will be as bright and as beautiful as when you cut through it the first time originally. And I think a nice thing to do would be even to wet that a little bit before you stick it on here. A little bit of insurance that those are going to stay in place. That's going to be a really pretty design once you get them all on there. Just a little score on the back of there, and give it a good press into place. So you can see those around the mug or placed on the outside of a pitcher. You can make this as big as you want. You just have to be patient enough to cut enough little Millefiore pieces. But people make entire bowls out of these. I mean, it's really, look it up, Google it, just do it. You're going to love Millefiore. Give it a shot. Wet the back of it and gently press it in place. And these could be square. I could trim the bottoms off of these. Okay. If you have leftover Millefiore pieces, don't throw them away. We can turn those into pastels. I'm going to show you that technique next. But once this dries, I'm going to scrape the tops of those, and they're going to be awesome little swirls on there. Alright, so this guy, real quick, we need to wash these off. So I'm going to bring it over the sink. Be careful, these are really fragile. It's just plaster. So you're going to take a wet rag and just get the clay re-wet. It's dried on there. Alright, we don't have to submerge the whole thing if we do this right. You can see there's quite a bit on there, so I'm just going to make sure that the rag is really wet. And just give this whole thing a good scrub. I want to get all the colors off of there so that the next person can have their own colors and not get mine in there. Be considerate of people after me, like I know so many of you are. You can see a pretty deep gouge there where someone went too far with it. Try to get this as white as you possibly can. We might have to want a little bit of water. Some of the darker colors are a little harder to get out. But do your best to get this as clean as possible. That's pretty good. It's pretty white. The brown's pretty in there, so be careful when you use the darker colors. This is not going to come off on anyone else's clay though, so don't worry. Alright, Millefiore, good luck.